Okay, Cub Cadet 782 with a 44-inch mower deck. It's a 44c. Um, what I've done is I've stripped everything down. I had taken apart the mule drive, sandblasted everything, um, and then I had bought this rust preventative paint, POR 15. We'll see whether or not it's any good. The local body shop supply said it was pretty good. They had a few different ones to choose from. That's the one that one of the fellows recommended, so I went with him. My father-in-law had used something else that he favors, but I couldn't remember the name, and I wound up with POR 15, so we'll see what happens. In any event, I went over that with rusty metal primer, Rust-Oleum, and then got some paint on some of the stuff, mostly the mule drive, which is, you can see, leaning against the wall there. So the plan of attack is, had to do quite a bit of welding on the deck. Had cracks at the lift points here, and also there was one down here, and then some holes which we were able to weld close. Other ones I just put JB Weld on. I still have a perforation here, so I'm going to gradually fill that in, build it up with some more of the JB Weld. That should suffice. So next step is putting this all back together. You'll realize once you strip a deck down just how many parts there are. I had actually gotten another deck from a fellow that had started to rebuild his deck, and then something happened health-wise, and he had ordered all brand new parts. So I had a spindle cover that was brand new. I had these gator blades, full set of pulleys, including center pulley, double center pulley, but it was for a half-inch belt, so I put that on eBay. I got rid of it. I had bought a new center pulley a few years back. It came with a used center pulley for a 3/4 belt. So I'm going to sandblast everything over there, and also do these as well, just to get the paint off them so I can prime them. And I found that black paint does not hold up. It just flakes off. So between the two decks, I have the other deck over here. I'll show you. See, that deck is pretty well rusted. I didn't want to use that as a base to build on. So again, back to the deck that we're working with. This one is the one that I've had, and I actually had cut this one down to fit on my father-in-law's trailer so that he could take it over to his property and mow. He was mowing with a hand mower, and it was just a hassle for him. So that permits him to get it on the trailer, and I really don't care one way or the other if it's got that chute slimmed down a little bit. It has a compliance seat on it, so I'm not going to put my hands under there. And in terms of really throwing things, I'm not that worried. So, like I say, next step is going to be putting this back together. And oh, one other thing I wanted to show you is deck spindles. So I'm going to set up the camera so I don't shake too much. I'll clamp it in something, and then I'm going to show you how you can rebuild these spindles. I have one, actually, you could see it. I had a split in it. This one also has a split in it. It has a crack, a stress crack. So that's what set me off in this venture in the first place. I needed new spindles because two of mine had cracks in them. I guess from trying to force grease in them or whatever. Over time they had cracked. You could see my shaking, so you don't want me holding the camera with that hand. So let me set this up and I'll show you how those work. Thanks. Okay, so back to the spindles. As I mentioned, I have two that had cracks in them here. You can actually see this crack here. There's a line running. I don't think it runs all the way across, but or actually, yes, it does. There's the other end of it there. So I wouldn't recommend taking apart a spindle unless you actually have like significant play. This was the center spindle on my deck, and you can actually see the play in this, which I would say means that the bearings inside are either worn or the race inside is worn, in which case, unless you can maybe find a ball that's slightly larger, a couple thousandths larger all the way around, you might be able to take up some of that wear. But really, if that's the case, you're probably going to need to find some other used spindles or splurge for new ones. But again, best case scenario with these spindles is that you find spindles and you take your time and get them to take grease. And once you get grease in them, that will take up any play that you have in them typically. But again, if you're going to go ahead and take them apart, I'm going to show you the anatomy of these things and how it is you'd go about getting them apart. Okay, so again, for demonstration, just to show you the anatomy of this thing. Obviously, it's not supposed to come apart like that. I hit this with a hammer to crack it so we could see how it is. So you can see this is where the balls move around in that race there. That is where you could potentially have wear if that was dry to the point where you had rust in there, and this had gotten pitted and excessively worn. You're probably not going to be able to pick that up with different sized balls, or at least it wouldn't be ideal. So you might consider in that case replacing the spindle. That said, if it's good and it just otherwise needs to have the balls replaced, these are kept in the nylon cage, which you can pull out, and then you'll be left just with the spindle. So that's this spindle design that we're looking at. There's another spindle design, which I have an example of, I'll show you, which is not for this method. Let me go get that quick. Okay, so the other spindle design is this one. It's a straight spindle, and then it has these collars, and then there would be bearings on top of this and seals. So this obviously is different from that, and different design. So we're looking at this one. So I'm going to show you with this other one that's not split how to pull that seal out and the cage and get the bearings out, and then how to put them back in. Okay guys, so to get the seal out, thread on a nut, and then if you tap it, see that seal just gradually will pop out. So do that on both ends, and then we're going to go after that nylon retainer. So what I did was slide that in past the seal here, or it's not the seal, it's the retainer on this side, and I pushed this out from the other side. Okay, so now what you see is, now you have the balls are, actually it looks like something, I don't know if that's one of them. There's a piece of metal in here. I'll have to see what that's about. But there are 6 balls in here. So I'm gonna go ahead. Oh no, that's this. Oh my goodness. So I'm gonna go ahead and crowd these over to one side, and then we'll be able to push the spindle and start pulling them out one by one. Okay, so we're going to pull one ball over, and should be able to get this. It may not work because the other side isn't done yet. we'll have to start pulling these out one at a time. Let me mess around with this and then I'll come back to it. What I did was I went ahead and pushed this to one side, and it kind of made a little snap noise, which was just the spindle getting past the bearings. So I've managed to drop one on the floor, which I'm going to go chase down, and I'm going to measure these just to see how much difference there is among them, because this spindle was pretty bad. And I'm going to clean this so we could see what the situation is, and then I'm just going to put it back together. Again, this is a bad spindle anyway, because it's got a crack in it, and I've managed to get 4 spindles, so I really don't need this one for anything. So this is just for demonstration. Let me go get that other bearing now. Here's a good example of a ball that would be a good candidate for replacement. So if you open it up and the balls, once you've cleaned them, this is not grease. That's actually just all pitted and scratched and scored. So those are likely to have flat spots on them and just excessive wear, which would cause you to have tolerances exceeded in how much run out you get on these spindles. So if that's the case when you open it up, then you would want to go ahead and replace the balls on it. So again, I'm going to get it so we're set up, and then I'll show you. So I went ahead and wiped this down with some paper towel just to get it cleaned up. Obviously, if you're doing this for real, you'd want to probably clean this in a parts washer. These balls are all undersized to varying degrees. Depending on where you measure them, they're out from 1,000 to a half thousandth on average. So that would definitely cause some run out. That and this housing, because it's cracked, is not the correct size. And for anybody that would think about it, you really can't weld this because you can't weld the inside. And if you could, you'd have to remachine this, and by the time you went through all that, obviously it would be cost prohibitive. Not to mention, it wouldn't make sense, so let's not weld it. Another thing I wanted to point out is these cups that sit on the underside, you know, the blade mounts to the bottom of the spindle here. You have your nut and everything, and then these come up. And if this is packed with debris, this cannot accept grease, and that is probably one of the things that you might want to consider is when you grease these spindles, is to ensure that you have the blades off and that you have these cups off, so that the grease can come out the bottom seal, and you can, you know, just wipe it off, and that way you're ensured that you're getting grease all the way through the spindle. See, I got the 5 bearings in there, or 5 balls anyway. I'm going to slide the spindle in. Okay, and then once you have that, you want to offset it, and then we're going to need to push this one ball up around. Actually, I have a little cock there. I need to slide this one ball up and over so we can get in this. Oops, see? That's what I was talking about, my shaky hands. So let's try another one. Okay, we got that one. I can get that one to roll over to the other side is what I need to happen, because then it'll be out of the way. And then we'll get another ball. Okay, so now we got 6 in there on the one side. So now you can see they're all crowded on one side. So now we need to disperse them, get them evenly spaced around so we can get that nylon cage back in. And fortunately, my little tool here, it's just a little J-hook. Helps get them pretty well spaced. Maybe not. I do have 6 in there. This guy's got to go. Okay, so now they're pretty well spaced. You clean the cage. I had one that was clean, or cleaner, I should say. Here it is. Drop that in, set it on top of those balls, and then you need to get a socket that'll push that in evenly. I think I have one of these is not correctly spaced. You can see it here. Pull this up with my tool again. Okay, let's try that again. Make sure these are in the right place, otherwise this cannot go in. That one's good. Got one over on this side that is not where it's got to be. Run over with another one here. Okay. And again. So there it went. Okay. So that's how you do it. And then you put your seal in. And before you do all that, make sure your spindle is taking grease, because if you go through all this trouble and then you can't get grease down to that hole down there, it defeats the whole purpose. Thanks for watching. I'll show you the deck when it's finished.